Good morning, Broncos fans. You're listening to another edition of Legends of Mile High. It's a podcast where we talk about history and current events. And today, we have a lot to talk about. I'm going old school with my old school Denver Broncos shirt because we are going to dive in to the Denver Broncos, the state of the Denver Broncos, and how some reasonable ideas can help fix this team. And we don't have to tear it all down, set it on fire, and then start from scratch. First of all, I'll just say it's hard to do that. Many teams that did rebuilds have still are doing rebuilds. So I mean, you can look at the Detroit Lions; they've been rebuilding for years. So rebuilding from scratch is a tough option. So let's talk about some reasonable ideas that can actually work. And it's worked before. I've seen it happen several times in history. And I've got three great examples of some teams that turned it around after having some poor seasons and with just a few simple ideas. So thank you for joining me this morning. I just want to say thank you to Scott helping out in the background. Don't forget to follow him at Scout Kennedy on Twitter. Follow or subscribe to the YouTube channel here at Mile High and like the show. And if you are in need of other football takes from me, you can follow me on Twitter at Thomas Hall NFL. So thank you very much for joining. And as we get started, let's jump into the chat real quick. We got some people coming in. We got Jeremy Sean, a listener that's almost always here. I really appreciate it coming in, saying good morning, Thomas. I'm glad the Raiders lost, but it's sad when a guy who has been somewhere about 24 hours has more chemistry than our guy who has had months and months. Yeah, I know. I tell you, it is heartbreaking to kind of see that, especially being Baker Mayfield. I mean, I liked him coming out of college, and I actually liked him with the Browns, and I think they made a mistake getting rid of him. But yeah, it is tough. It really is to see that happen, and then know that Russell Wilson has just flat out been poor this year, and that's I would just have to say sometimes it just happens in the NFL. Any given Sunday, luck, whatever. I mean, it was it was hard to see that coming. Really, everybody thought that the Rams were going to get smoked by the Raiders, and the Raiders aren't very good. I mean, I know they kind of turned it around here the last few weeks, and they gave it to the Broncos twice this year, which is terrible to see, but they're not that great of a team. So, it's just one of those things that happen. And I know I saw on Twitter this morning when I got up, people were like, saying the same thing, but you know what? It happens once in a while. And, we can kind of laugh about it and joke, because that's about all we can do right now is just kind of laugh and joke about it, because the state of the Broncos is terrible. Eddie Vasquez, morning, Thomas. Appreciate you giving us some Broncos content on this great Friday. You're awesome. Well, thank you, Eddie. I appreciate that. I don't get called awesome very, very often, so I appreciate that. I hope that you enjoy the show today, and thanks for coming in. I really enjoy seeing those positive comments. Thank you very much. Dom's coming in. Good morning, Thomas, Scott, and Broncos country. Yay, the Raiders lost. Always a great day in Broncos country. Have a great weekend, Thomas. Broncos country, Denver Broncos for life. Yeah, and I'll just say one thing about the and Luke, good morning, all. Thank you, Luke, for coming in. Appreciate it. I just want to say one thing about the Raiders. I mean, the Broncos used to have their number too. So back when Shanahan was the coach, we rarely witnessed a loss to the Raiders. So it comes around, and I hope it comes around again soon, where the Broncos are taken to the Raiders every year, and we don't have to suffer through this anymore. So thank you for that comment, Dom. I appreciate it. And Luke, thank you for coming in. And Jeremy Bales, good morning, Thomas. I believe Russell will bounce back. And that's a good comment. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. I think that's the problem here and I get into this state of mind where, the Broncos have been bad for so long. They're terrible. We just got to do something, and it's got to be drastic, right? And I'll tweet something out after the game, and I'm like, feeling pretty down about it, and just looking at the Broncos and just thinking, oh man, this is terrible. But then I start to think about it, and I get to be a little more level-headed. I start to think a little bit, and the thing about Russell Wilson is this is kind of unexpected. And I know I saw there was someone that sent out this, he saw the decline coming because he saw these EPA per play things. Well, that analysis was kind of flawed. That he started that analysis on one of Russell Wilson's best seasons of his career and then showed a decline over the next 2 years, which really isn't very good analysis. So yeah, he has declined if you look at it that way. Had been declining because anytime you started a great season and then you kind of come down from there, usually it's never let's start at the worst season and then show a decline, because same thing, it's going to be opposite. So I think Russell Wilson is a good quarterback and he needs something different. And I don't think you need to cut Russell Wilson, and you can't really. I mean, maybe you could bench him, but I don't. I mean, yeah, I guess that would be send him a message. But the problem is there. Well, there's a couple problems. Number one, he has the wrong coach and the wrong system for him, and that's the first thing I want to talk about. That's the first change that has to be made. And um, and it stinks to have to do it after 1 year, after we've watched the Broncos cycle through coach after coach after coach. But the problem is they've gotten the wrong coach every time. And that's a problem. And they don't need a new coach. They need the right coach. And Hackett is not it. And anybody that knows anything about leading a team or leading a business or anything knows that Hackett's not that person. He's not doing it well. I mean, you look at the Melvin Gordon fiasco, you look at Albert O just sitting on the sidelines, having really, I don't know what he did that, made it so bad for him, but he's sitting on the sidelines for a heck of a lot less than Melvin Gordon. So, there's a lot of key issues. And the scheme, I've written about the scheme. The scheme it's just not right. I mean, I love the West Coast offense, but what they run isn't usually the tenets of the West Coast offense. And I love the zone blocking scheme too. I see that rare. And when they do run it, it works. So, I think that's the first step. And I'm going to talk about three different times that in the history of pro football, the recent history, at least what I can remember, that's worked and worked well. And the first one was actually in 1992. I mean, the Steelers had a legendary coach, Chuck Knox, who was just no longer able to do what he had done in the past. And, that he was a legend. And to actually fire him and replace him with Bill Cowher was a big move by the Roonies. And they stick with coaches for a long time, and they do a great job of hiring the right coach. And that's what they did. I mean, Bill Cowher came in, and the team went from 7-9, and which was not a great season, but not as bad as this season is for the Broncos, really. And he took them to 11-5, and really he used almost the same players. There were a few differences. Neil O'Donnell had another year in the system, which was good. I mean, the first year was a rookie, so it's kind of understandable. But they still had the same running back, Barry Foster, Merrill Hodge. I think their wide receivers were worse. They made a couple changes, in the defense and whatnot, but it wasn't a drastic change. It was just a new coach with a new scheme, a new system, and a new offensive coordinator. I mean, and they actually were able to utilize Neil O'Donnell a little bit better, and they came up with a better scheme to make it work. And they went 11-5. I mean, that's not a huge turnaround from 7-9 to 11-5, but for a first timer head coach using the same team, basically, that was a big deal. And that was in 1992. That was quite a while ago, but it happens. It's happened many times in the past. So I'm going to just jump back in here. I've got a comment from Donald Thomas. Do you think if we get a better head coach and offensive coordinator, do you think they can run the same playbook like Mike did with Jake Plummer? Well, that's the thing. Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about is a new coach who can not just bring in a new offense that fits, but make Russell Wilson better and make him do, play the system the way it's supposed to be played. And I think that's the confusion. Like, you have Russell Wilson playing in a system that doesn't really fit him. And I don't think the whole system has really been implemented correctly, or it seemed like early on they kind of abandoned it for some reason. I don't know, but yes, I do believe that. I think a new offensive coordinator and a head coach who can handle Russell Wilson correctly. I like Russell Wilson. I mean, I know he's getting a bad rep and people are piling on him because he's odd or whatever and goofy. But you know what? He's still got the skills. He just needs the right system and the right coach to handle him correctly. And whatever that is, whoever that is, I'm not sure. There's a few options out there, but yes, I think that needs to change. I mean, you have an offensive coordinator now that really doesn't. I mean, I think that he helps with the game plan, but he's not even calling plays. So, something has to change there. He's kind of like just the odd man out sitting there. You got Clint Kubiak calling the plays, and um, and then Hackett's the head coach. So, what is the offensive coordinator doing? I don't know. I don't understand. But anyway, so excuse me. And then the next time that this kind of big turnaround happened from a new head coach and a new system was the Baltimore Ravens. In 2008, John Harbaugh and the Brian Billick led Ravens were really good. I mean, they won the Super Bowl on a great defense, and I have to credit a little bit more to the defensive coordinator for that than I think Brian Billick was an okay coach. I think he had some great coordinators around him, and obviously a historically great defense that won that Super Bowl. But he kind of came down and was not coaching very well, and went 5-11, and that was with Kyle Bowler. You can't you know you can't like knock him down too much because he did have Kyle Bowler as his quarterback. But the next season, John Harbaugh came in. He's a good coach and changed it all around. He did it with a rookie, Joe Flacco. And we know we witnessed firsthand how Joe Flacco was an incredible quarterback. I mean, he made his name on one great playoff run, and he was an okay quarterback, but he was a rookie at the time. And also, they lost their Hall of Fame left tackle, Jonathan Ogden, and they still did significantly better. I mean, they improved by 6 games, just going from one head coach, one system to another. And otherwise, they had similar players again. Although they did bring in Trevor Pryce, who I think is one of the most underrated players of all time. I mean, he's a great Denver Bronco. I wish he would have stuck around with the Broncos instead of leaving to go to the Ravens, of course. But they made a few changes, and that's the thing. You can't have a great player at every position in the NFL today. It just doesn't happen. I mean, you could luck into it for a little while, if you happen to get really lucky on some late round picks like some teams have, but you just can't do it. So you have to have great players at certain spots and then fill it in and take care of those lesser players with a good scheme and putting them in the right position. And a new coach, a good coach, can do that for the Denver Broncos. I mean, it's obvious they have a stellar defense. I mean, you don't have to make too many changes. I think you need to bring in or at least get Randy Gregory healthy for sure. But you need a little bit better pass rush, in my opinion, than what we've seen the last few weeks. And you need to fill in a couple spots. So you don't really have to make too many changes with the defense. Get an impact player for sure, and then on the offense, the big thing is the offensive line. That needs to be some made some significant changes. But the rest of the team is really the rest of the offense has been hurt due to injuries. I mean, their wide receiving core is completely decimated for the most part. You've got the offensive line. I don't know how many. I haven't counted how many games have been missed by the offensive line, but I mean, Garrett Bowles done for the season. Billy Turner has played just a little bit. Cushenberry's hurt. You've got rotation like on top of rotation on that offensive line. But that's the key, I think, is to that's one of the second key. And I'll talk about the final coach, but is to fix the offensive line. And the reason why I say that, and I think they need to spend big money on free agency in the offensive line, and they need to go to the draft for offensive line because the style of Russell Wilson's play. He holds the ball a little longer than other quarterbacks. And if you have a porous offensive line, he's not going to be able to get the ball out. And that's just a fact. That's just something that the team has to understand and make changes. And if that's how he plays, then the team has to figure out how to make the most of that. And I don't think that Hackett knows how to do that. He's very rigid in his thinking. He hasn't made many changes at all. He sticks with what he thinks is going to work, hoping that it works, and it never does. And that's the problem. So the second biggest change that they need to do is overhaul the offensive line. I think they can stick with medium, middle of the road running back. They don't have to draft a first round running back. I mean, we've seen NFL teams today that can make do with a decent running back, and I actually think that they have pretty solid wide receiver core if they can get them to work out. I mean, not the whole thing. I mean, I was disappointed in KJ Hamler. I think Jerry Jeudy in the right system can be a great player, and I think Cortland Sutton. I don't know what the heck's wrong with him this year. Something ain't right with him, and but he's still a good player. So I think the key is the offensive line. You got Greg Dulcich. He's a great tight end, only going to get better. So I think there's some promise. So that's why I'm saying don't just tear the whole thing down and start over. Fit a system to play to the strengths of this team and Russell Wilson, and just fix the areas that really need to be fixed. Jeremy Sean coming back in. I agree the offensive line should be a top priority, whether it's Russ or a young QB in a couple of years. We need a good line. Yeah, and you can't get rid of Russ right now. So you're going to have to do what you got to do with Russ Wilson. It's just the way it is, you're stuck with him at least a couple of years. The dead cap hits is incredible, and if you just like throw up your hand and say we're done, then that's bad mental processing. I mean, you've got a $250 million quarterback, and you're just going to throw up your arms and get rid of him. No, you make it work. You've got to figure out how to make it work, and that's the key. Silent one of the worst things that the 2022 Broncos have done is ruin this upcoming game against the Chiefs for us fans. I was so looking forward to this game the day we signed Russ. Yeah, it doesn't bode well. I mean, the Chiefs are really pretty good. I thought they wouldn't be as good, and I thought the AFC West was going to be a heck of a lot better, but the AFC West stinks, and the Chiefs are running it away with it again, and that's a bummer. But any given Sunday, you never know. You just never know about this game coming up. Who knows? Maybe the Broncos can somehow figure it out. I don't know. It doesn't look good though. And Dom, I just want to read your comment here. Heavenly anniversary to DT today. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a tragedy that he passed away too soon. Great player for the Denver Broncos, Super Bowl champion. Great person. It is. Thank you for mentioning that. I appreciate that. I actually kind of forgot about that today. And it was, I remember I went to the game when they were honoring him last season. And that was, it was sad. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Keith Brugman coming in. Do you ask Russell to negotiate his contract to bring in some O-line? Thank you for coming in from Facebook. I really appreciate it, Keith. I appreciate the comment. Yeah, you can ask him. I mean, and that's the thing with these contracts now. I mean, you saw they gave Patrick Mahomes, an ungodly amount of number. They just keep restructuring it to fit things in. So I think they could work with it, and they should. I mean, they definitely need to bring in some line, but I think they've got, they're going to have the cap space to do it anyway. Next year as it is. So they need to bring in something. And I've written about this in the past, and I think there's a few players that just need to go. And one of them is Garrett Bowles. I mean, and that's only because he's only been here and known losing, and coming back from an injury. I think they're going to have to replace him at left tackle. And I think they need to spend some money to do it for this season, but draft the potential left tackle of the future. So I don't know. I don't know if they need to renegotiate his contract, but I think they will. I think they will down the road anyway. And I think that's what the plan was for Russell Wilson. I mean, and that's just the nature of how the NFL works these days. So the last team I want to talk about, and people have talked, and I've seen this a lot about hoping that this is a head coaching candidate, which I don't think it is, but that's John Harbaugh's brother, Jim Harbaugh. He took over the 49ers. And that was a mess under Mike Singletary. He got fired. Jim Tomsula came in and the last few games, but it was a disaster. And they were 6-10, and he turned them around, and they went to 13-3 with the same quarterback, Alex Smith. And Jim Harbaugh's system got the most out of Alex Smith, the most that you'd seen. So that's the key. Again, that's what I'm keep talking about is. There's no reason to burn it down to the ground. Just make some small changes that actually work. Bring in the right head coach. And who that is, I don't know. And I'll tell you that the other thing that the 2011 49ers had happen was better luck on injuries, because some of the key players from the year prior, 2010, missed time. Frank Gore, a couple other players that the 49ers really needed that year, missed a lot of time from injuries. So that's another piece that we're missing, is you can't win in the NFL if you keep losing players to injury. It's just, you lose your stars and you're done, and it's just the way it is. You cannot, after a while, you can't overcome it. And I know the Green Bay Packers won the Super Bowl with 15 players on the injured reserve. Some of those players were starters, I think about 5 of them. So how they did it was that was pretty amazing, and that doesn't happen very often. So I think that I think injuries is a key, and I think that's some change needs to be made. And I'm not saying that the training staff is bad or whatever. And I've seen a ton of stuff out there about the ACL injuries and everything. And I don't want to put blame on them, but a change may help in that situation. The Broncos have been very injured, and that's a key. So making a change in that area is a big deal, right? Like maybe it just the change, gives it a different perspective, different luck. I don't know what it is, but those are kind of the 3 major things that I believe need to be changed. And that's getting the right coach, fixing the O-line, and somehow changing this injury bug that they've had over the last few years. And I think those are all the things that you really need. There's a little things here and there that you got to fit in, but that's a bit different than just tearing it all down. So some of the coaches I think that have been thrown out there are good options. Dan Quinn, I'm not a huge fan of Dan Quinn, but I think he'd be a good leader if he brought in the right coordinator, which I think maybe brought Brian Schottenheimer. I know Keith Brugman. So what's your thoughts on Brian Schottenheimer as a future head coach? I don't know if he might be a great future head coach. I don't know, but I don't think it's the Broncos need to bring in some vet coach that they just need to bring in the right coach, and they just have not. And just because it's a first timer, maybe Brian Schottenheimer as a first time head coach would be that guy. I don't know. Gary Payton, sorry, Sean Payton. Went back to old school basketball there for a second. Wow. Sean Payton's been thrown around. I think he's a good leader. I think he'd be a good one to bring, but then you've got to give up draft picks for him, and that's a bummer. So, and the Broncos need those draft picks. So I don't know if that's an option. I don't know if he'd take it. I do know this, that the people that are out there saying that nobody wants to take over the head coaching job for the Denver Broncos because of the state of affairs is nonsense. I mean, coaches would jump at the opportunity. You've got an ownership that has lots of money. You've got a GM, George Payton, who's had his mistakes. Don't get me wrong; he's definitely had his mistakes. But he's also a pretty good GM. So people wanting to fire George Payton, I've said it too, that the bloom kind of came off the rose with George Payton, with some of the moves he made, Randy Gregory being one of them. But that doesn't, everybody makes mistakes. And they're pointing to Russell Wilson as the biggest one. And this year, yeah, it's a huge mistake. But again, any GM probably would have done that deal. Everybody was excited about that deal. It looks bad now, but a few changes could, like I said, a few changes could make that look like a pretty good trade. So you're stuck with Russell Wilson, whether we like it or not. So that's just the name of the game. And then, so I just, Adam Bumgarner, you guys want to keep a QB who just smiles and laughs and gives stupid motivational speeches after he lets down an elite defense every week. I'll just answer that, Adam. That's who he is. That's who he always has been. And I don't judge him on what he does after the game. It's what he does during the game. And he has been an elite level quarterback for a long time, and he still has the skill to do that. It's not like he, like Peyton Manning, where his neck finally just gave out on him, or Neil Lomax, who had an arthritic hip that he just couldn't play anymore. He can still play. He just has to be put in the right position to play well. I don't care what he says after the game. And yeah, it's, you want people to be fiery and be upset or whatever. But you know what? We need to judge him on the field, not off the field. And it's easy to pile on to his antics after the game and whatnot. And I don't like it. I don't like it when teams are losing and they're smiling on the sideline, laughing, yucking it up. But you know what? It's that's the nature of the game. These people are this is their job, and after the game they try to forget about it and go be who they are. And if he's corny, he's corny. Oh well, big deal. I don't. I want him to play good on the field, and when he does play good on the field again, that kind of stuff's not going to bother anybody. Michael, thank you for coming in. It's been a while since I've seen you on. I appreciate it. Good morning, Thomas, on Legends of Mile High. Go Broncos. The Michael Ronquillo, the man, you are a legend when it comes to Mile High Huddle. So thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. It's good to see you. So Keith Brugman's throwing out a couple names for coaches: Brian Schottenheimer, Dan Quinn, Kellen Moore. Just a few names on my list. Yeah, I mean those are definitely names on the list. I'm not a big proponent for Kellen Moore yet. I think. I don't know how he'd be leading an entire team. I think Dan Quinn is kind of coming out as the lead. I mean, if there's any possible way, I know Jim Harbaugh is like he's one of those that you're not going to get him, and he's kind of hard to deal with. But man, he could sure change the fortunes of this team with his coaching ability for sure. But I don't think he's coming. So it may be a surprise pick. Who knows? And it has happened. I mean, there's been surprise picks that have worked out. The problem is everybody's gun shy right now because we watched the Broncos pick Vance Joseph, and then they went from Vance Joseph to Mr. Old curmudgeon Vic Fangio, who was an okay coach, but my gosh, he wasn't very good either. So and then they went with Nathaniel Hackett, and it's just that's the problem is we're watching the mistake since 3 in a row. But they didn't make a mistake with Gary Kubiak, and they didn't make a mistake with John Fox. Those two coaches, got plenty of wins in Broncos country. Josh McDaniels was a mistake, and this was from Pat Bowlen, who was one of the best owners in the league. So it happens. We just watched it happen 3 times in a row, and that it makes people think we need to do something else. But the front office and the ownership for the Broncos can't dwell on that. They have to say we need to pick the right person. They've got to go through the right process. I didn't think the process was right last time. I think that they just didn't have people on the list that they should have had on. And I think they zeroed in on Nathaniel Hackett right away. And I think that was the biggest mistake, and I know like the New York Giants coach, Brian DeBoer there, he I don't think he was on the list because I didn't think he wanted it. He was looking for something specific. Maybe that's what I've heard, but it would have been nice to have him on the list. A couple others. I mean, Kevin O'Connell. Nobody thought that he was on the list, but he's up in Minnesota doing a great job. He was first-time head coach that was on the list for the Broncos. They just picked the wrong person. So I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. There's some good candidates out there, first-time head coach and some retreads. The retread coach scares me a little bit, only because I've done a lot of research into retreads, and for every one that works out, I can show you 3 that don't work out. But if they had success in the past and something happened, so like Dan Quinn, I mean, I've said a few things about Dan Quinn that would push me to where I don't like him, but he's still a good head coach. There were some things that went wrong that caused their downfall, and one of them being that they couldn't finish out a game. Now, was that his fault? Was he not good enough to coach to win at the end, or was it a terrible defense that they kept giving him? That's a question that he could answer if he became the head coach of the Denver Broncos, because they have a great defense. Although they haven't been able to finish lately, they still have a great defense. So you never know what Dan Quinn could do. But the nice thing about it is he's got, has experience with Russell Wilson. He can bring in an offensive coordinator that knows how to handle Russell Wilson and put him in the place to succeed. And Dan Quinn, maybe he's a defensive minded head coach. And I've seen people, oh man, we don't need a defensive minded head coach. No, the head coach. That's the problem with Hackett, is he wanted to be the offensive coordinator here, not the head coach. And you need someone that can come in and lead a team, put together a team to bring your strategy, have your strategy, bring the right people together to implement that strategy and have it play out on the field. Nathaniel Hackett can't do that. That's the problem. That's the mark of any good leader, whether it's on the football field or not, is putting together the right strategy and bringing the people together that can implement that strategy and make it work. He can't do it. And that's the problem. But I think Dan Quinn could. I still have some trepidation about bringing him in, but I think that's one candidate that's going to be at the top of the list. And I think if they had done it, I was excited about Hackett. I bought into his offense and what he was saying, but if they'd have brought Dan Quinn in instead of Hackett, I think we'd be looking at a much different year this year. Although, once the injury started to mount up, maybe it would have tanked. But the whole beginning to end of this Hackett ride has been bad. I mean, he no time in the preseason, which at the time I was like, okay, it's smart. You don't want people to get injured, but they got injured anyway. So they started out completely out of time. The offense wasn't clicking. And then the next thing you know, this injury started to mount up. And so then there was, they had no chance. So Jeremy Shawn, Dan Quinn feels like a John Fox type of hire. Yeah. And that's funny because people want to bring some vet in to like change it all around. Like John Fox did. He kind of like brought winning into the organization, I guess. But I believe it was more Peyton Manning that really kind of turned it around. I mean, he brought Peyton Manning in and they started winning. Yeah, they won with Tim Tebow. Don't get me wrong. That was a masterful mid-season change of offense. But that was that was once in a lifetime type of thing. I mean, Tebow was not a good quarterback, and the defense kept them in. And then at the end, Tebow found a way to win. And everybody points to it, but Peyton Manning was that. And I wasn't a big John Fox fan. He's a good coach, not a great coach. And he's, we got a couple of teams to the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not trying to knock John Fox, but he just didn't have that. I would say that finishing touch that was necessary to get them over the hump. And they brought in Gary Kubiak, and he did it. Maybe that was just that was their time. I don't know, but coaching matters. I mean, look at what Belichick's doing, in New England without a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's still winning games. He's a good coach, and he's putting his players in the right position to succeed. And he has a strategy. He knows who can bring that strategy out, and they put it out on the field. So, I just I don't know who it's going to be, but it has to be the right coach. It has to be the right coach for a long term. And that's what Mike Shanahan was. And, people point to Mike Shanahan coming in as being a retread that failed in the, in his first stint. And now look at him. He was a Hall of Fame caliber head coach. Well, I'll tell you, Shanahan was doomed from the beginning when he took the Raiders. He should have never taken the Raiders head coaching job. I mean, that was doomed from the beginning. He couldn't bring in his coaches he wanted. Al Davis, who hired him and had this mentality of bringing in this new innovative head coach with a new system, and yet he didn't want the new system in there. The Shanahan system, he kept saying he didn't want it. He wanted his system, and it was just doomed from the beginning. So Shanahan would have been a head coach somewhere else, a good head coach somewhere else probably, but not with the Raiders and not with Al Davis. And Al Davis, he's the only one to blame for that. And then you got to see the Raiders being terrible for a long stretch of time, which as a Broncos fan, it's good to see. Clayton Huron, thank you for coming in this morning from Facebook. I appreciate it. Morning, smash that like button and share, guys. Man, we need to get that dub this Sunday. Yes. I mean, this has been worse than, I hate losing the Raiders, or I hate watching the Broncos lose to the Raiders, but the Chiefs losing to the Chiefs for, I mean, 13 straight it's tough to take. And the funny thing is the Chiefs had the Broncos number in the AFL days. Everybody had the Broncos numbers in the AFL days. They were a horrible team. And the Chiefs had made the head to head like was a big gap going into when the Broncos started getting better, and they were 2 games away from turning that head to head matchup to 500, and then this streak happened, and now the Broncos are way down on the losing end of that again. So it's a bummer to watch. It really is. So I think that again, I'll just wrap this up and then we'll jump off the show. I appreciate everybody coming in the comments. Sorry if I didn't read all of them. The 3 things that the Broncos have got to do this offseason. Number 1, bring in the right coach and system for Russell Wilson. You're stuck with him, and you have to get the best out of him. And I think you can. I think he's not terribly injured. He's not, whatever's happening to him this year isn't something that's always happened to him. So that has to happen. That's the number 1. And it has to be the right coach, not just a retread or for the sake of being a retread. It has to be the right coach. Number 2, they have to fix the offensive line. That's been decimated by injuries, but it was poor play. I think Risner was playing poorly all year. I don't think Garrett Bowles was playing that great. And then the Cushenberry was awful. So I think Quinn Miners is the only player on that offensive line that you keep. Obviously, you've got to keep some of them. You can't just throw them all out and replace all of them. It just isn't going to happen. But Miners is your future, and you got to bring in a new left tackle and hopefully a new center that can actually play. And then finally, you got to figure out the injury problem, and that's the biggest thing. No team's going to be able to win. It's a war of attrition out there, and you keep losing your stars. And one honorable mention is George Payton's got to remember that pass rushing is key to winning in the NFL these days. And for some reason, he thinks pass rushers, elite pass rushers can grow on trees, and he's got to stop trading away the best pass rushers, in my opinion. And bring in somebody that can stay healthy and get after the passer. But those are the things that need to change. And I think you're going to see success. And I don't think you're going to, you're going to see a turnaround. You see winning season if that happens. I just know that you will in my heart that if you just make those few changes, you're going to see a winning season. The Broncos have lost 1-score games all season. So they're terrible, but close. The defense is good. And, if they could just find that impact player to come through when it's necessary, that Wilson used to be, then you're going to see wins. So this weekend, I hope the Broncos can figure out a way to beat the Chiefs, just to give Broncos country something to be thankful for. So hopefully that happens. But again, thank you very much for coming in and listening to the show. Thank you for the comments. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to support Mile High Huddle, both on the website here on YouTube. I appreciate it. Follow Scott Kennedy, who's does a great job keeping us all up and running. So thank you very much. I'm going to start bringing back the Mile High Legend that I do again. So I took a break from that, but it takes a lot of research to get those in. So I'm going to start bringing those back. So if anybody that missed it, those will start coming back to end the show. So thank you very much. Good luck this weekend. And thank you all. Appreciate you coming in. Have a great day, Broncos fans.